Elena knelt to her daughter's level, taking her cheeks gently in both hands. Her voice was steady but soft, steady because she had to be, soft because the truth beneath it was terrifying. "I won't let anything hurt you. I promise." Mira nodded, her fear folding into quiet trust. A sudden bang hit the side door, a jolt, not enough to break it open, yet just enough to test its strength. Elena's pulse surged. She moved quickly, gently ushering Mira toward the staircase. "Upstairs," she whispered, "quiet as you can." They climbed the wooden steps, each creak echoing like a whisper of their own vulnerability. Elena held Mira's hand tightly, guiding her into the small bedroom at the far end of the hall. They crouched beside the bed, still, silent, listening. Below, another bang shook the door, harder this time. Glass cracked in the kitchen, not shattered, but tested. Elena's heartbeat pounded against her ribs so hard she felt it in her throat. Her breath grew shallow as she listened to the house respond, wood tightening, beams settling as if bracing itself. Mira curled against her chest. "Why are they doing this?" she whispered. Elena stroked her hair, her voice quiet but trembling with truth. "Because this house holds something they want, something they shouldn't have." Another voice below, a deeper one, cut through the dark. "If the door's locked, break the window." Elena squeezed her eyes shut. She knew what was coming next. Glass, wood, footsteps inside. She pressed a kiss to Mira's forehead. "Stay behind me, whatever happens." But before the next blow struck, something else happened. Something that froze Elena in place. A deep, resonant vibration rolled through the house, not from outside, not from footsteps, from below, from the chamber. The floor beneath them trembled softly, like a heartbeat rising from the depths of the mountain. The vibration pulsed again, this time stronger, pressing into the boards like a warning drum echoing through centuries of stone. Mira gasped quietly, "Mom, the chamber is waking up." Elena held her daughter close as a cold realization wrapped around her. It wasn't just the intruders closing in that made the house tremble. It was the truth beneath the mountain answering, reacting, calling to her. Below, glass shattered as intruders finally broke their way inside. Above, the house trembled with ancient purpose, and trapped between them, Elena Ruiz understood. This mountain, this chamber, this legacy, it was all rising to meet her, whether she was ready or not. The moment the intruders shattered the kitchen window, the mountain answered with a tremor that rolled through the house like a low warning growl. Elena felt it beneath her palms, through the floorboards, deep in the spine of the structure, as if the ground itself rejected the trespassers who dared step across its threshold. The house groaned softly, ancient beams tightening like strained muscles. Mira clung to Elena, her breath quick and uneven, her small fingers digging into her mother's sleeve, but her eyes, wide, steady, shimmering with something fierce, never left the trembling floor. "Elena," she whispered, voice quivering with awe instead of fear, "the mountain knows they're here." Another tremor shuddered through the floor, stronger this time. Dust drifted from the ceiling in thin silver threads. The old rocking horse in the child's room creaked faintly, shifting just an inch before settling again. Below them, voices echoed through the house, shoes crunching across broken glass, hushed orders slicing through the dark. "Spread out. Find the access point. Check every room." Elena pulled Mira gently toward the deepest corner of the upstairs hall. She knew the house well enough now to understand which places groaned the least, which boards carried their sound like whispers rather than warnings. They moved in slow, precise steps, guided more by instinct than by thought, but the intruders moved faster. Boots thudded into the living room. Glass crackled under shifting weight. Lights flicked on artificial beams, slicing through the natural darkness like knives. Elena's breath hitched. These weren't reckless thieves operating blind. They were coordinated, searching with purpose, moving with practiced silence between each order, and they knew, she could hear it in their urgency, in their precise movements, in the way they ignored valuables and went straight for the structural lines of the house. They knew the chamber existed. They knew what lay beneath mattered. Mira tugged on her sleeve gently. "Mom, the chamber feels scared." The tremor beneath them pulsed again, firmer, like a heartbeat growing stronger under pressure. Elena swallowed hard. "I know. I feel it too." They ducked into the farthest bedroom, one Elena hadn't explored in depth yet. Dust veiled the air, glowing like drifting ghosts in the moonlight. Old furniture leaned against the walls, untouched for decades. A single dresser stood crooked, drawer half open as if someone once left in a hurry. Elena closed the door silently and pressed her back against it, holding Mira close. Her heartbeat pounded against the wood, echoing the rhythm she felt from the mountain. Boots thudded in the hall below. One set, then another. A deep voice rose beneath them. "Check the floors. There's a hatch in here somewhere." Elena's breath froze. They knew exactly where to look. She scanned the room, her eyes darting from wall to window, from shadows to corners, searching for anything they could use, anywhere they could hide. But even as she searched, something else caught her attention. A faint hum, so soft she almost mistook it for her own pulse. It was coming from the walls. Elena stepped away from the door and placed her hand against the wooden panel. A gentle vibration thrummed beneath her fingertips, not chaotic like the intruder's footsteps, not sharp like breaking glass. This was steady, ancient, intentional. The house wasn't just reacting, it was responding. "Elena." Mira breathed. "It's trying to help us." Below, another voice barked an order. "Start tearing the boards. The hatch is under one of these rooms." Elena's pulse quickened. If they reached the chamber before she understood its secrets, before she understood its purpose, the consequences could be catastrophic. Not just for her, not just for Mira, for whatever the mountain had been guarding for centuries. She crouched beside Mira, bringing their foreheads close. Her whisper was urgent but steady. "We're not going to let them find it. The house doesn't want them to, and neither do we." Mira nodded, fierce determination flickering through her fear. Below them, a loud crash sounded as someone shoved a heavy piece of furniture aside. "Found something." Elena's stomach dropped. The intruders had reached the foyer, the floorboards, the hatch, and then boom, a violent tremor surged through the entire house. Elena grabbed Mira, steadying them as the dresser rattled and dust shook loose from the rafters. The walls groaned under the strain, sound swelling like a deep, ancient roar rising from the earth. The mountain wasn't just stirring, it was warning, raging, awakening. The intruders shouted in alarm. "What the hell? Earthquake! Hold on." But Elena knew better. The mountain house had been silent for a very long time, too long, and now, disturbed by greedy hands and broken windows, its patience had snapped. Mira clung to her mother's waist, her voice trembling. "Mom, they're not supposed to be here. The mountain won't let them." Elena knew she had seconds, maybe minutes, before the intruders regrouped, before they forced the hatch, before they reached the stone door, and she needed to get there first. She needed to protect the chamber, protect the truth buried beneath generations, protect Mira, protect herself, protect whatever pulse lived within the mountain's heart. She kissed Mira's forehead, her voice low and steady as the tremor eased. "We're going downstairs, quiet, fast." The mountain rumbled once more beneath them, soft, guiding, like a warning disguised as a push. Elena took Mira's hand, and together they moved toward the danger, because the true threat wasn't the men inside the house. It was what would happen if those men reached the chamber before Elena did. Elena moved down the hallway with Mira's hand clasped tightly in hers, every step guided by the pulsing vibration beneath the floorboards. The tremors had eased, but the sense of urgency remained, dense, heavy, alive. It was as though the mountain itself whispered warnings through the bones of house, urging them to move before it was too late. Below, the intruders were regrouping after the tremor. Boots scraped across the warped floor. A voice hissed through the dark. "Find that hatch." Whatever's down there, grab it before anything else happens. Another voice, deeper, colder, answered, "We don't leave until we have it." Elena's breath hitched. These weren't just treasure hunters or opportunists. They were men who believed something priceless lay beneath her feet. Men willing to tear the house apart inch by inch to reach it. As she reached the top of the staircase, she paused, listening. Her pulse thundered in her ears, but beneath it, she could still hear the subtle hum of the chamber below, steady, ancient, vibrating through the boards, as if preparing itself for what came next. Mira tugged her hand gently. "Mom, the mountain's trying to keep them away, but it can't do it alone." Elena nodded, despite the fear tying knots in her chest. "I know, and we won't let them get there." A heavy crash echoed from the foyer, a sharp, splintering sound like wood giving way under force. The intruders had found the floorboards, found the hatch. Elena swallowed hard. They were almost out of time. She crouched low, pulling Mira with her as they descended the staircase. Every creak of the old wood felt painfully loud in the tense silence, but the intruders were too focused on the chamber to notice. From the bottom of the stairs, Elena could see their boots, dark silhouettes crowding near the hatch. One man knelt on the floor, jamming a crowbar beneath the boards, sweat glinting. In the lantern light, another kept watch at the window, and the third, the quiet one with the measured stance, simply stared at the hatch as if he could already see the riches lying below. "Lift it on 3, the leader said. 1, 2, a thud. The mountain growled again, shaking the house with a short, sharp tremor. Dust poured from the ceiling. A portrait on the wall crashed to the floor. The man at the hatch flinched. "This place is going to come down." "Then we move faster." The leader snapped. "Open it." Elena pressed herself against the wall beside the stairs, pulling Mira into her chest to shield her from sight. The men hadn't noticed them yet, but they would. And once they did, there would be no reasoning with them. The boards finally groaned under pressure, prying upward with a split of wood that sounded like bone snapping. The crowbar slipped in deeper, lifting the floorboard to reveal the metal ring of the hatch beneath. Elena's breath seized. Mira clung tighter. "Mom, they can't open it." "They're not supposed to." Elena whispered back, "I know." But she also knew they were about to try. The leader knelt, gripping the ring with both hands. "Help me lift it." Another man mirrored him, and together they pulled. At that exact moment, the mountain erupted in its strongest tremor yet. The house shuddered violently. The chandelier above them swung with a metallic scream. Floorboards rippled under the intruder's feet. One man stumbled, slamming into the wall. The leader swore under his breath. "Earthquake. Move. No, keep pulling. Damn this house. Just drag it open." The men yanked harder. Below Elena's feet, the chamber reacted, sending a deep, rolling vibration upward, pushing back as if resisting their touch. The hatch rattled violently, almost jumping from their hands. It wasn't just a tremor. It wasn't just the mountain. The chamber itself was responding. Elena didn't have time to think, only act. She whispered sharply, "Mira, stay behind me." Mira nodded and pressed herself into the corner of the wall. Elena moved, stepping onto the bottom stair with a quiet fury building inside her. Fear had stopped mattering. The mountain, the house, the chamber. They felt like allies now, and Elena refused to let these men reach what they had no right to touch. She stepped into the open. "Enough," she said. Her voice wasn't loud, it didn't echo, but it carried a weight that stopped the men mid-movement. All 3 heads snapped toward her. Shock flickered across their faces, shock that anyone was here, shock that she stood her ground instead of hiding, shock that this quiet, exhausted single mother had become a barrier between them and the secrets they hunted. The leader rose slowly, his eyes narrowed. "Well, looks like we're not alone." Elena didn't back away. "You need to leave." The man nearest the hatch smirked. "Or what?" Another stepped forward. flexing his grip on the crowbar. "You have no idea what's under here, lady." Elena's voice steadied. "And neither do you." The leader's expression hardened. Something cold glinted behind his eyes. "We know enough to change everything." He took a step toward her. At that exact moment, a violent tremor surged through the house, stronger than all the others. The chandelier tore from the ceiling, crashing to the floor between Elena and the intruders with an explosive burst of glass and metal. The shockwave threw them all backward, men stumbling over each other, arms flailing, curses flying. Elena shielded her face from the shards. Mira screamed from the corner, then clamped her hand over her mouth to silence it. The tremor faded, but not completely. The house hummed with a low, continuous vibration. The chamber below pulsed like a warning heartbeat. The leader regained his balance, fury twisting across his face. "Grab the hatch, now." But Elena had already made up her mind. She lunged forward, planting her foot over the metal ring and slamming the hatch shut with all her weight. The boards below trembled violently beneath her, like the chamber was reacting to her choice, to her need to protect it. One of the intruders reached for her arm. She jerked back just in time, dodging his grasp. "You don't get to touch this," she hissed. The leader snarled. "It doesn't belong to you." Elena's voice lowered, fierce and unwavering. "It does now." Another tremor shook the house, small but certain, like a final warning. Outside, lightning split the sky sharp, white, violent. Thunder cracked, echoing across the ridge like the mountain roaring its defiance. In the blinding flash through the windows, Elena saw it. 3 silhouettes approaching the house from the forest. More intruders, more danger, more shadows closing in. The leader saw them too. He grinned. The storm had finally broken, and the true confrontation was about to begin. Thunder rolled across the ridge like a living creature awakening in fury, shaking the house with a low, primal growl. Elena felt it vibrate through her bones as the storm swallowed the last traces of daylight. Lightning split the sky again, sharp, white, violent, briefly freezing every movement inside the house in a flash of electric clarity. 3 more silhouettes were closing in fast from the forest line, their bodies cutting through the trees with purposeful strides. Inside, the men who'd already broken in were regaining their footing, their frustration now darkening into something more dangerous: desperation. The leader's shadow stretched long across the floorboards, trembling with each flicker of lightning as he stared down Elena with a cold, calculated hunger. The storm didn't frighten him, but the chamber did, and Elena, standing between him and whatever lay beneath the house, had suddenly become more than a nuisance. She had become an obstacle. "Move," he ordered, voice low and edged with threat. Elena stayed planted over the hatch, her arms tense, her breath steadying despite the fear crashing inside her like its own storm. Mira watched from the corner, trembling but silent, her eyes glistening with brave defiance that Elena felt like fire in her chest. Another crash of thunder shook the windows. Another lightning flash revealed the intruders outside, now close enough to see their heavy coats, their purposeful march, their shoulders squared for confrontation. The leader's lip curled. "You think you can stop all of us?" Elena didn't answer. She couldn't speak, not because she was afraid, but because her instincts felt older than words. She wasn't standing on the boards anymore. She was standing with the mountain itself. Behind her, the floor vibrated, soft, deliberate, alive. The chamber pulsed beneath her feet, like a heartbeat aligning with her own. The leader took a step forward. In that moment, the entire house seemed to wake. The lights flickered violently. The beams groaned under the pressure of the storm. Wind howled through the broken window with the sound of something ancient rushing toward them. And then, boom, the front door exploded inward as the 3 new intruders forced their way inside. Wood splintered, wind roared, shadows collided with shadows. Mira screamed and scrambled back. Elena lunged toward her without thinking, pulling her close as the storm wind tore across the foyer, scattering dust, shards of glass, and loose pages from the journals. The newcomers stepped into the house with determination carved into their movement, less cautious than the first group, more aggressive, driven purely by intent. They scanned the room instantly, identifying the men near the hatch. Then Elena, then the floorboards beneath her feet. One of them shouted over the storm, "They're under her, that's where it is." The leader barked an order to his original men. "Get her out of the way." Elena felt Mira's small body shaking against her side. She held her daughter tighter as boots pounded toward them. The house reacted first. A violent tremor surged upward, so strong it cracked one of the ceiling beams. Dust rained down in heavy clouds. A large cabinet toppled in the hallway with a thunderous crash, blocking one intruder from advancing. Another lightning flash lit the chamber floor beneath Elena, its shadows rippling like a living current pushing back. The mountain wasn't just stirring, it was fighting. "Mom!" Mira cried as a man lunged toward Elena's arm. Elena twisted away, ducking just in time as his hand scraped against her sleeve instead of dragging her off the hatch. She stumbled but stayed upright, pulling Mira behind her, shielding her with her entire body. Thunder cracked right above the roof, so loud the walls shivered. The leader winced, then stepped forward against. Lower this time, deliberate, prepared. "This isn't yours," he growled. "You don't even know what you're protecting." Elena steadied her breath. "I know enough." Lightning, flash, illuminating the fury twisted across all their faces. "It belongs to history." Another man spat. "To those who can use it." No, she knew it in her bones. This didn't belong to greed, to wealth, to power. It belonged to the mountain, to the people who carved those symbols, to the guardians who built this house, to the pulse echoing beneath her feet. It was meant to be protected, not exploited. She whispered to Mira, "Run when I tell you." But before she could finish the thought, the leader lunged again, this time faster than before. Elena jerked back, but her heels slipped across the trembling floor, and she stumbled to one knee. Her weight shifted off the hatch. The intruders surged forward like wolves sensing an opening. Mira cried out, "Mom!" Elena scrambled upward, but the leader was already reaching for the metal ring. "No!" Elena yelled, too late. He grabbed it. The floor vibrated fiercely beneath them, so violently that the lantern on the table shattered, spilling shards of glass and darkness across the room. The wind howled even louder, as if screaming toward the chamber. The leader pulled. The hatch groaned. Wood strained. The chamber trembled in fury, and then the house went dead silent. The kind of silence that wasn't empty, the kind that was holding its breath, the kind that only came before something irreversible. Lightning flashed again, illuminating the terror in Mira's eyes, the determination in Elena's jaw, and the greed carved into the leader's expression. He pulled harder. The hatch cracked upward, and in that suspended second, as wood splintered and symbols awakened beneath the surface, Elena realized, if the chamber opened now with these men in this moment, the mountain might not survive what happened next. The storm roared, the house groaned, the chamber pulsed like a waking giant, and Elena Ruiz braced herself because the night of broken shadows was only beginning. The moment the hatch cracked open, the house seemed to recoil. A deep, rolling groan surged through floorboards, rising from the hidden chamber like a warning that shook Elena to her core. The wind howled as if pulled through the walls by an ancient breath, scattering pages of the journals like frightened birds taking flight. Mira clung to Elena, her fingers trembling against her mother's wrist. "Mom, don't let them open it." Elena didn't hesitate. She lunged forward. The leader wrenched the ring again, splintering the wood further. But before he could lift it fully, Elena's hand slammed down on the edge of the hatch with a force she didn't know her body possessed. Pain shot up her arm, but she didn't move. She pressed all her weight onto the boards, pinning the hatch back into place. "Get out of this house," She growled, breath shaking, voice tight with fury. The leader grabbed her wrist, squeezing hard enough to bruise. "Move!" Elena twisted violently, breaking his grip, using the house's tremor to propel herself backward. The floor shuddered beneath the intruder's feet, making one man stumble onto his knees. Lightning burst through the windows, illuminating their snarling expressions, the hunger in their eyes, the frustration boiling under their skin. But the mountain wasn't done warning them. The chandelier chain hanging above the foyer snapped with a metallic crack, sending the heavy fixture plummeting. It smashed into the floor with a thunderous crash, scattering shards of crystal across the boards and forcing the men back. The house was defending itself. The sudden blast of wind forced the curtains outward like ghostly wings. The front and back door frames groaned. Upstairs windows rattled violently as if something outside pounded against the storm itself. Yet inside the chaos, the intruders gathered themselves again. The leader wiped dust from his coat, breathing hard. "3 of you, hold her back. The rest, get the hatch open, now." Mira screamed, "Leave us alone," but the men didn't care. 2 rushed toward Elena. She pushed Mira behind her and braced herself as the first man grabbed her arm. His fingers clamped like iron, twisting. Elena gritted her teeth through the pain and slammed her shoulder into his sternum. The collision knocked the breath from him, sending him stumbling back. The second man lunged from the side. Elena ducked. He crashed into the wooden column near the stairs, ripping a chunk from the frame. Dust exploded around him. He cursed, reaching out again, but another tremor shook the floor, strong enough to make him lose his balance. The chamber below was reacting to the attempt to open it. The boards beneath Elena's feet vibrated with a rhythm like a heartbeat on the edge of rage. It pulsed harder each time greedy hands touched the hatch. The leader shouted at 2 more men, "Hold her." They rushed forward, but before they could reach her, a violent surge from the mountain buckled a plank beneath one intruder's foot. He yelped as it splintered, dropping him to one knee. The house was choosing sides. "Stop!" Elena shouted, voice breaking through the storm. "You don't understand what's down there." Lightning illuminated her face. Fear, fury, the weight of responsibility etched into her eyes. The leader spat back, "And you think you do?" He lunged once more, grabbing the ring with both hands. Elena felt the air pressure shift. The chamber stirred beneath. A low, rumbling hum vibrated through the floor, not weak, not asleep, not passive. "Awake!" Mira cried, "Mom, something's happening." A deep crack split through the floorboards surrounding the hatch, thin at first, then widening in a jagged line that glowed faintly in the lightning flashes. The symbols carved into the foundation below, the circles, spirals, and sunbursts flared like outlines beneath the wood, as though light pulsed inside the mountain itself. The leader's face shifted, fear flickering for the first time. But fear didn't slow him. He pulled again. The hatch strained upward 1 inch, 2 inches, the boards splintering further, and then the world dropped into chaos. A violent shockwave burst upward from the sealed chamber, a force so powerful it threw everyone off their feet. The lantern on the mantel shattered. The windows bowed inward. Dust burst from the rafters in thick clouds. Elena hit the floor hard, shielding Mira with her body as the room spun. The intruders slammed into walls, furniture, each other, groaning in pain, cursing, scrambling to stand. The leader's voice tore through the dark, "Don't stop, get IT open," but the house roared back. A beam cracked overhead, crashing down like a fallen tree. It slammed between Elena and the intruders, sending a spray of wooden splinters across the floor and blocking their path to the hatch. The house had drawn a line. "Elena," Mira whispered, her voice trembling with awe, "it's protecting us." Elena pulled her daughter close, her eyes fixed on the hatch, now pulsing faintly with the chamber's thundering heartbeat. She could feel it in her ribs, in her throat, in the very air around them. This wasn't merely a hidden room. It was something alive in its own way, ancient, powerful, aware, and the mountain was fighting back. The men regrouped, shaking off dust, stumbling toward another way around the beam. Elena knew they wouldn't stop, not until they reached what lay below, not until they took it, not until they destroyed everything in their path. She rose to her knees, pulling Mira up with her. "Mira," she whispered urgently, "when I tell you, run toward the hall. Don't look back." Mira swallowed hard. "What about the chamber?" Elena's voice broke into a whisper of resolve, fragile but unshakable. "I'm going to protect it, no matter what." Lightning split the sky above them once more. Thunder rolled through the house like the roar of a great beast. And as the intruders circled the fallen beam with renewed ferocity, Elena Ruiz felt the truth settle inside her like a spark igniting. Tonight wasn't just a fight for survival. It was a fight for the mountain's legacy. A fight for the truth hidden beneath generations. A fight for everything she had become since stepping into this forsaken house. The shadows around her deepened, the storm raged, the chamber pulsed, and the night of broken shadows was about to break even further. The storm outside had reached a violent crescendo, but the true storm was beneath the floor. An ancient pulse, rising with a force Elena could feel in her teeth, her bones, her breath. The chamber's heartbeat throbbed through the house, shaking the walls with a rhythm that felt older than language itself. Dust drifted from the rafters in steady streams, as if the mountain were exhaling centuries all at once. The intruders were climbing over the fallen beam now, desperate, determined, driven by a greed so feverish it made their movements jagged with urgency. The leader's voice barked through the dark, hoarse with a blend of fear and obsession. "Move. I don't care if the place collapses. Open that hatch." Elena tightened her grip on Mira's hand, pulling her back as another tremor rolled through the floorboards. The beam beneath their feet twisted, groaned, then settled with a pained creak. Mira's heart pounded against Elena's arm, but her eyes, wide, glistening, fierce, never wavered. "Elena," she whispered, "the chamber doesn't want them. I can feel it." Elena believed her. Every vibration felt like the mountain speaking, fierce, wounded, unwilling to be violated. The carvings beneath the wood glowed faintly with every flash of lightning, symbols rising like flames trapped under the surface. The intruders didn't see it, they didn't feel it. All they saw was opportunity. One man grabbed at the fallen beam, trying to pull it aside. Another smashed the butt of his flashlight against the boards, determined to pry them loose. The leader crouched at the hatch with renewed fury, blood streaking his cheek from falling debris, his breath ragged. He spat through gritted teeth, "It's right here. Everything we came for. Open it." The floorboards shuddered violently beneath his touch. A warning, a last one, but he ignored it. He jammed the crowbar beneath the hatch and pulled with all his strength. The wood groaned, splintered, then snapped upward under the force. A blast of cold air slammed into the room like a shockwave from the earth's core. Elena stumbled back, shielding Mira as the intruders were thrown off their feet. The leader flew backward, colliding with the far wall, but even then, dizzy, dazed, he crawled back toward the opening like the hatch was calling him. The ground beneath them trembled again, this time with a violent crack that echoed through the bones of the house. "Elena," Mira cried, gripping her tighter. "It's going to break." The storm outside roared as if answering the panic below. Elena pushed Mira behind a pillar just as another crack split across the foyer floor, a jagged line glowing faintly with the chamber's golden pulse. Light, real light, forced its way up through the splintered boards. Not fire, not electricity, something older, something ancient, something alive, A low hum filled the air, vibrating Elena's ribs, shaking the windows, humming through the shattered glass. The intruders stared at the glow with a mix of awe and madness. One whispered, voice trembling, "What? What is that?" Another answered, "Treasure, a whole vault of it." But Elena could see it was something more, something sacred, powerful, untamed. The leader inched closer to the glowing crack, eyes wide with greed. "Help me pry it open, the door's right beneath this." He motioned toward his men, but the mountain answered before they could move. The floor buckled with a violent jolt. Boards snapped. Furniture toppled. A bookshelf crashed to the ground, flooding the room with ancient journals and cascading dust. Mira screamed as the floor lurched beneath her. Elena grabbed her daughter into her arms, bracing against the wall as the world quaked around them. She could feel it now. The mountain wasn't simply resisting. It was collapsing, not out of destruction but out of protection. The leader staggered to his feet again, refusing to retreat, refusing to surrender. "Hold it open. We're so close." A bolt of lightning exploded outside, illuminating the room for a split second, just long enough for Elena to see the truth. The crack in the floor wasn't random. It formed a perfect circle. A circle that matched the carved sun symbol from the ceiling, the windows, the journals. The chamber door below was opening itself, not for them but for Elena. The hum deepened, vibrating the entire house. Light flooded the cracks, brighter now, warm gold bleeding upward as if dawn itself were rising from under the earth. Mira gasped, clutching her mother. "It's waking up." The intruders scrambled backward, shielding their eyes from the glare. The leader stumbled to the side, then pressed forward again, desperate to claim the light. "This is mine," he yelled, but another violent tremor knocked him to his knees. The beam beside him fell. The chamber's pulse intensified. The floor beneath them all split further, sliding open by force, by purpose. Elena pulled Mira away as a final shockwave struck the house, blasting the hatch fully upward, obliterating the boards, flooding the room with ancient golden light, and revealing the entrance to the vault below. A swirling pattern of carved stone glowed in a rising spiral, symbols igniting one by one like stars returning to the night sky. The leader stared into the glowing descent, mesmerized, breath shaking in his chest. "It's real," he whispered. But Elena felt something different, not greed, not awe, but destiny. The vault was calling her. The mountain was guiding her. The ancient chamber waited. And as the golden light washed over her face and Mira's trembling shoulders, Elena Ruiz realized the truth. She was standing at the threshold of the hidden vault, the place the journals called the Chamber of Dawn. And the real danger was only beginning. The golden light pouring from the shattered floor washed over the entire foyer, bending shadows into trembling silhouettes. The air felt charged, humming with a low, ancient resonance that made Elena's skin prickle. It wasn't just illumination. This was the unveiling of something sacred, something that had been locked away from human eyes for centuries. Mira clutched Elena's shirt, her small voice barely a whisper against the roar of the storm. "Mom, something's coming awake down there." Elena tightened her arms around her daughter, shielding her as the glow intensified. The swirling pattern of stone beneath the floor, the carved spiral now fully visible, rotated with a slow, grinding shift, unlocking with a deliberate motion that shook the entire house. Dust rained down in thick clouds. The storm outside felt distant compared to the force rising from below. The intruders stared in stunned silence, faces pale in the golden glow. The leader was the first to recover, his greed flaring back to life with ferocity. He shoved one of his men aside, inching toward the opening like a moth drawn to a flame. "This is it," he breathed, voice trembling. "This is the vault." The chamber pulsed again, its light flaring, then pulling inward like a living breath. A rush of cold air surged upward, whipping Elena's hair across her face. The staircase carved into the stone descended in a spiral, deeper than any basement, deeper than any man-made structure had a right to be. It beckoned, it warned, it waited. The leader planted his foot on the first carved step, and the vault reacted instantly. The stone beneath his boot glowed red, hot for a second, and a violent jolt of force blasted upward, throwing him backward across the room like a rag doll. He slammed into the far wall, collapsing in a heap of dust and debris. His men staggered, panic cracking through their voices for the first time. What the hell was that? It's Booby, trapped. No, it's alive. But Elena had already sensed the truth. The vault rejected those who approached with greed. The hum beneath the house deepened, no longer just sound, but emotion. It felt like sadness, like warning, like centuries old grief. Elena, Mira whispered, I think it wants you. The words hit Elena like a trembling pulse. Her heart hammered, her breath tightened, but the feeling was unmistakable, as if the chamber recognized her footsteps, the same way the mountain had recognized her presence. The original caretakers had written about this, the blood of intention, not lineage, not ancestry, but spirit, purpose, heart. The vault chose who could enter, and tonight, under lightning, ripped skies and collapsing beams, it was choosing her. But the intruders saw her movement, and desperation turned to fury. She's going down there, one of them shouted. She can't stop her. Two men rushed forward, fighting the trembling ground. Elena shoved Mira behind the fallen beam just as the men lunged at her. Their boots skidded across the glowing floor. One stumbled, falling into the swirling light, his hand inches from the carved step. The vault reacted again. A burst of air erupted upward, forcing him back with such force he flew across the room and crashed into the side table. His flashlight shattered, scattering sparks across the floor. The second man froze mid-lunge, terror finally piercing through his rage. Don't touch the light, he screamed at his comrades. It's burning. Elena didn't waste the moment. She grabbed Mira's hand and slid toward the opening, keeping close to the wall where the vibration was softer, where the light didn't flare violently. The vortex of stone and symbols spun below like a living tapestry. But as they neared the edge, a thunderous crack split the ceiling. A giant beam dropped from above, smashing between Elena and the intruders, but also blocking her path forward. The vault trembled, the stairs lit with golden veins pulsing like a heartbeat. Elena, Mira cried, pulling at her arm, there's another way, and there through the thick swirl of dust, they saw it, a narrow stone ledge running along the edge of the opening, small, shaking, dangerous. But real, a path only someone small, careful, and trusted by the chamber could take. The intruders surged again, this time not with greed, but desperation. They sensed the vault slipping beyond their reach. One man yelled, block them off, grab the kid. Elena spun, fierce determination erupting inside her. Stay away from her, the house answered. Another quake, this one sharp and violent. The floor buckled under the intruders, sending two crashing to the ground. The leader staggered to his feet, blood streaming from his forehead, eyes filled with madness. He roared into the storm. No one leaves this house with it. No one. Lightning exploded outside, illuminating the entire scene. Elena shielding Mira. Intruders scrambling over rubble, the vault glowing with ancient fury, the house trembling like a living guardian, and the storm clawing at the windows like a furious beast. Elena took a deep breath, her chest burning with resolve. This ends now, she whispered. Mira squeezed her hand. I trust you, Mom. The vault pulsed once more, hot, bright, ancient, alive. The chosen path waited. The house trembled. And Elena Ruiz stepped toward the swirling light, because the only way to save the mountain's legacy was to face the vault before the intruders reached it, and stole everything the world was never meant to misuse. The first step into the vault felt like stepping into the heart of dawn itself. and the descent had only just begun. The world shifted the moment Elena stepped into the vault. The house above, the storm outside, the intruders clawing at the broken floor. Everything vanished behind a veil of humming gold. The air changed first, thinning into something impossibly ancient, carrying the faint scent of stone warmed by time. The spiraling steps beneath her feet felt smoother than any rock she had ever touched, almost polished by centuries of ritual. Mira followed closely, her small hand gripping Elena's tightly, her breathing soft but steady. The deeper they descended, the brighter the chamber grew, not with electric light, but with a warm glow that seemed to rise from the stone itself. Each step pulsed faintly, like the mountain was beating with a second heart. Behind them, the intruders roared in frustration, blocked by fallen beams and the vault's fierce rejection. Their shouts echoed through the opening, but grew distant with every step downward. Elena didn't look back. The vault didn't want her to. It wanted her to see what lay ahead. At the bottom of the spiral, the passage opened into a cavern, so vast it stole the breath from her lungs. The ceiling arched high above, like the inside of an ancient cathedral, carved from the earth. Patterns lined the stones, spirals, suns, eyes, symbols glowing faintly in delicate, soft rhythms. Mira whispered, her voice trembling in awe, "Mom, it looks alive," and it did. The walls shimmered with veins of golden ore, but the glow was too warm, too controlled to be simple reflection. It hovered in the air like suspended dawn. Dust motes floated, sparkling like miniature stars, drifting through the chamber. But the center held something else entirely. Elena stepped forward, breath catching as her eyes adjusted. A pedestal stood in the heart of the vault, carved from deep black stone streaked with gold. On top of it rested a box, small, rectangular, sealed with a pattern she recognized instantly from the journals. The mark of the Dawn Keepers. It wasn't ornate, it wasn't oversized, it wasn't flashy, it was humble, precise, intentional, and yet its presence commanded the entire chamber. Mira slipped her hand from Elena's grip and moved closer, her eyes wide in soft wonder. This is what it was protecting. Elena approached the pedestal slowly, every nerve in her body alive with reverence and fear. She reached out, hesitating just before her fingertips touched the box. The air around it hummed faintly, as if asking her to consider her intentions one last time. Her heart steadied, she touched it. The box warmed instantly beneath her hand, its carved lines glowing brighter for a brief moment. Recognition, acceptance, permission. Elena inhaled sharply. Gently she lifted the lid. What lay inside stole the very sound from the room. A small statue, only the size of her hand, rested on a bed of ancient woven fibers. It was carved with intricate detail, every line, every curve, every polished surface revealing craftsmanship not seen in any museum or civilization she knew. And the material, smooth as river stone but glowing like softened sunlight, told her instantly this wasn't gold. This was something rarer, something long lost, something priceless. The idol depicted a figure with its arms raised, holding a radiant sun disk above its head, 8 pointed rays extending outward in perfect symmetry. Its eyes, carved with haunting depth, reflected not fear or dominance, but peace, purpose, balance. Mira whispered, "It's beautiful." Elena's throat tightened. The weight of it in her hand felt impossibly heavy for its size, as though she held not a relic, but a story older than history itself. The warmth pulsing from the idol traveled into her fingers, then up her arm. It wasn't painful. It wasn't frightening. It felt like understanding, like clarity, like the mountain recognizing her once more. Above them, a deep tremor rolled through the earth, low, distant, controlled. The vault wasn't panicking. It wasn't collapsing. It was speaking. Mira looked up at Elena. It's waking up the whole mountain. Elena clutched the idol tighter, pressing it against her chest. A slow breath escaped her, trembling with awe, fear, and overwhelming certainty. This was the crown of dawn, the artifact Dr. Salvatierra wrote about. The treasure-greedy hands had hunted for generations. The sacred symbol meant to remain hidden until the right person found it. A faint whisper drifted through the vault. No words, no voice, just a sensation moving like wind through ancient carvings. Elena understood it instinctively. Protection, stewardship, choice. She looked down at the idol again. Its sun disk reflected the golden glow around them, shimmering like a rising dawn trapped in stone. "Mom," Mira whispered, "what do we do with it?" Elena's voice was soft, steady, certain. "We protect it. That's why we're here." She tucked the artifact gently into the folds of her jacket, holding Mira close with her free arm. But as she turned toward the spiraled steps, a deafening crack shattered the calm. The intruders had found another way into the vault. A slab of stone high on the cavern wall split sharply, dust pouring down in thick clouds. A flashlight beam cut through the falling debris. Voices echo, angrier now, more frantic, driven by a feverish hunger. "There they are. Get the artifact. Now, hurry before the place caves in." Mira gasped and pressed closer to her mother. Elena's heart raced, but she didn't hesitate. She grabbed her daughter's hand and backed away from the collapsing wall. The vault trembled, but its light grew brighter, protective, warning, alive. The cavern roared with ancient force as intruders forced their way in. And Elena Ruiz, artifact in hand, daughter at her side, realized the truth with a clarity that struck like lightning. The fight for the crown of dawn was only beginning. The wall of the cavern buckled with a violent groan, stone raining down like pieces of a ruined sky. Elena shielded Mira with her arms as the dust exploded outward, blinding, choking, swirling in thick clouds that turned the golden vault into a storm of its own. The tremors rippling through the ground were no longer warnings. These were defenses, born from a force older than the intruders could comprehend. Through the settling haze, figures scrambled into the vault. 5 of them. The leader limped in first, blood dripping from a fresh cut on his temple, his eyes blazing with feverish desperation. Behind him, his men stumbled forward, coughing and swearing, their flashlights slicing chaotic beams across the cavern walls. One beam landed on Elena. There, the leader roared, staggering toward her. "She has it, take ID." Mira gripped her mother's sleeve with trembling fingers, pressing close. Elena stepped back, clutching the artifact tighter against her chest. The pedestal behind her glowed softly, its hum rising like a heartbeat calling out across the chamber. The intruders surged forward, but the vault answered faster. A column of golden light shot upward from the pedestal, blasting dust in every direction with a gust that nearly knocked Elena off her feet. The men recoiled instinctively, shielding their faces as the chamber's carvings flared to life. Spirals igniting one by one, sun symbols glowing with fierce, ancient brilliance. "What is happening?" one intruder shouted. "It's activating. Move," another screamed, but the mountain wasn't activating, it was defending. A low rumble rose through the earth, deep, rhythmic, powerful like thunder trapped inside stone. "Elena," Mira whispered softly, "it doesn't want them here." "I know," Elena breathed. Another fissure split across the cavern floor. Golden light seeped upward, forming a widening barrier between Elena and the intruders. The leader tried to leap across the crack, but the moment his boot touched the glowing edge, He was thrown backward by a burst of energy so forceful, he slammed into the wall and collapsed onto the ground, gasping. His men froze, fear finally puncturing their greed. It won't let us through. It's protecting the artifact. We have to take it from her. Elena stepped back toward the spiraled passage leading upward, pulling Mira with her. She didn't know how long the vault could hold them back, but she knew one thing with unshakable clarity. The artifact trusted her. The chamber trusted her, and she would not betray that trust. The leader dragged himself up, fury burning in his eyes. "You don't deserve it." Elena's voice came out steady, quiet, and unbreakably firm. "No one does. It's not for us. It's not for you. It belongs to the mountain." He stumbled forward again, pushing past the glowing cracks, ignoring the warnings. "Elena," Mira cried. The cavern responded before Elena could. A shockwave burst from the pedestal, stronger, brighter, louder than before, a roaring pulse of golden energy that ripped through the vault like a living wind. The intruders were thrown backward, slamming into walls, collapsing onto the floor. Tools, flashlights, and packs were hurled away like weightless leaves. The ceiling shook violently, and chunks of stone rained down from above. The vault had chosen. Mira clung to Elena, tears streaking down her dusty cheeks. "Mom, it won't hold forever." Elena nodded. "We're leaving, now." They turned toward the spiraling stone steps, but the ground surged beneath them. Another quake, sharper than the rest. A jagged crack ripped across the staircase, splitting it into two uneven halves. Dust plumed upward, choking the air. Mira stumbled. Elena caught her, pulling her close. The cavern rumbled again, this time deeper, a sound Elena felt in her chest like distant thunder booming beneath her heartbeat. She looked up just in time to see more intruders forcing themselves to their feet, pushing past debris, driven by obsession that still burned through the rising chaos. One pointed at her. "Stop her." She tightened her grip around Mira and took the first leap onto the cracked step. The rock shifted beneath her, but it held. She pulled Mira up, climbing fast now, every movement carved by urgency. Behind them, the leader screamed, voice raw with rage. "That artifact is worth millions. It's ours." Elena didn't look back. She didn't need to, because the vault answered for her. Another surge of golden energy ripped through the chamber, and the leader staggered, his words swallowed by the roar of collapsing stone. "Mom," Mira cried. The ceiling, Elena looked up. Cracks spidered across the vaulted ceiling, glowing faintly as dust poured down like snowfall. The mountain wasn't collapsing. It was sealing itself again, closing the chamber, burying its secret deeper where greed could not reach. "Hurry," Elena whispered, pulling Mira upward. A beam of lightning flashed through the opening above, marking the distant path back to the house. Mira climbed faster, footing more sure with every step, drawn by instinct and the pull of safety. The cavern behind them erupted in a chorus of panicked screams as the walls began to close inward. The intruders tripped, stumbled, scrambled back, trapped between their greed and the mountain's wrath. "Elena," one shouted, voice cracking. "Help us." Elena hesitated, just for a breath. She wasn't cruel, she wasn't vengeful, but she wasn't reckless either. She clutched the artifact closer, pressed Mira forward, and whispered, "We can't save people who break what's not theirs." As they climbed the final stretch of spiraled stone, the chamber behind them erupted into a brilliant flash of gold. The vault roared a single, thunderous sound, and sealed itself with a violent tremor that shook the mountain from root to peak. The intruders' screams vanished under the grind of stone. The light dimmed, the heartbeat stilled, and the chamber of dawn went silent once more. Elena and Mira crawled through the final opening and collapsed onto the cracked wooden boards of the house above, gasping for air, trembling from head to toe. Outside, The storm was beginning to fade. But inside Elena's jacket, the artifact pulsed with a soft, living warmth, a treasure worth $180 million to the world, but worth far more to the mountain that had protected it for centuries. Elena held Mira close. They had survived, but the fight was far from over. Now they had to protect what remained. The storm had passed, but the world it left behind felt unrecognizable. The mountain air lay still, heavy with the echo of everything that had shattered in the night. Elena staggered through the broken foyer, Mira pressed tightly against her side, both of them coughing through clouds of settling dust. The house creaked beneath their feet, its ancient ribs strained but still standing, bruised, splintered, yet fiercely intact. Elena's legs trembled as she leaned against the wall for support. The boards beneath her were warm, pulsing faintly, the last whispers of the vault sealing itself deep below. Mira's hand clung to the front of Elena's jacket, right where the artifact rested against her chest. The crown of dawn radiated a soft, steady warmth, almost like a heartbeat keeping them grounded amid the ruins. For the first time in hours, the house was silent. No intruders, no shattering beams, no echo of greedy boots thundering through the halls. Just quiet. Mira stepped away first, wiping dust from her cheeks with trembling fingers. Her voice was small but steady. "Mom, did the mountain save us?" Elena knelt, brushing Mira's hair back from her face. "It saved itself, sweetheart, and it saved us too." But beneath her calm words lived a deeper truth, one she could feel in the cracks under their feet, in the silence pressing against their ears. The mountain had not finished speaking. It had only begun. As dawn broke over the ridge, pale gold spilled through the shattered windows, washing the ruined foyer in gentle, forgiving light. It touched the debris strewn across the floor, the fallen beams, the splintered walls, and softened them. It touched Mira's dusty hair, setting it aglow. And when it touched Elena's jacket, the artifact answered with a subtle shimmer beneath the fabric. The sun itself seemed to bow to the ancient relic hidden against her heart. "Elena," Mira murmured, staring at the broken boards, "will people come looking for this place, for us?" Elena's chest tightened. Yes, the men from last night wouldn't be the only ones. Their disappearance would be noticed. Greed had a way of echoing. Someone somewhere would demand answers. She swallowed the lump in her throat and stood slowly, feeling the weight of the artifact shift with her movements. "They will try," she whispered. "But we're not alone anymore." She wasn't saying it to reassure Mira. She was saying it because she felt it. The house had chosen its allies. The mountain had chosen its guardian. And the chamber, the heart of everything, had chosen Elena. She stepped carefully across the wreckage, toward the open window where the storm clouds had finally broken apart, revealing a breathtaking sweep of golden morning light over the valley. The wind pushed gently into the room, cool and rejuvenating, carrying scents of pine and wet earth. For a moment, Elena simply breathed. Every inhale tasted like survival. Every exhale tasted like truth. The truth Dr. Salvatore had dedicated his life to. The truth hidden by generations of guardians. The truth stolen from history and buried in silence. Mira joined her at the window, her fingers curling around Elena's. "What happens now?" she asked softly. Elena looked down at the mountains, then at the broken home that had become their sanctuary, then at the artifact glowing faintly beneath her jacket. What happened now? The truth of the mountain could no longer stay buried. Not safely, not honestly, not if it meant others would come clawing for it in darkness. "You and I," Elena said gently, "we're going to protect what's down there, but we're also going to tell the right people, people who won't try to take it, but will help us keep it safe." Mira nodded slowly, as if absorbing the weight of her mother's promise. Like Dr. Salvatore wanted. Elena felt tears sting her eyes. Yes, exactly like he wanted. She glanced back at the fallen journals scattered across the dusty floor. Pages filled with warnings, hopes, translations, sketches, and sacrifices of a man who understood the mountain long before she did. He hadn't just been researching, he'd been safeguarding, and now his burden had fallen onto her shoulders. Another tremor, this one soft like a sigh. Rolled through the house. Elena placed her hand on the wall. "Thank you," she whispered into the wood. The floor beneath her warmed briefly in return. Mira watched her with wide, thoughtful eyes. "Mom, are we safe now?" Elena hesitated, not out of fear, but out of honesty. Because safety wasn't something the mountain could guarantee. Not when others still hungered for the secrets beneath their feet. Not when greed traveled faster than truth. But they had survived the impossible. They had protected the vault through the storm, and now, with dawn lighting the broken home in warm gold, Elena felt a strength rise inside her she had never known before, determined, fierce, unbreakable. "We're safer than we were last night," she said softly, "and tomorrow we'll be safer still." Mira leaned into her side, and together they stood at the window, watching the mountain breathe under the new morning sun. It wasn't peace, not yet, but it was the beginning of one, and as the light deepened across the ridge, Elena knew they were stepping into the next part of their journey, one where truth, justice, and legacy would be their weapons. One where the world would finally learn what the mountain had protected for centuries. And one where, for the first time, Elena Ruiz would not run from her destiny, she would rise to meet it. The morning sun rose higher, warming the frost-bitten shards of glass still clinging to the shattered window frames. Elena stood in the center of the ruined foyer, every breath slow, deliberate, measured. The silence felt different now, not fearful, but waiting, as if the mountain itself lingered in the corners of the house, listening to the choices she would make. She gathered the scattered journals one by one, placing them gently on the cracked table. Each page she lifted felt like handling the breath of someone who had trusted her across generations. Dr. Salvatierra's handwriting trembled with urgency on some pages, hope on others, and every line reminded her that she was now part of a lineage she had never asked for, yet was destined to continue. Mira sat nearby, quietly sorting through broken pieces of pottery they'd found upstairs earlier. Her fingers were small, careful, reverent, just like her mother's. The mountain had changed her too. Strength flickered in her young eyes, not from understanding everything, but from seeing her mother refuse to bow to the darkness that had surrounded them. Outside, wind sifted through the trees, carrying the faint hum of distant voices. Not intruders, not threats, neighbors, deputies, reporters. The world was arriving, and Elena knew she could no longer keep the burden hidden inside these cracked walls. The front door creaked when she opened it, revealing a thin gathering of townspeople at the edge of the property. Their faces were etched with shock and concern, some recognizing her from long shifts at the diner, others simply staring at the shattered house perched against the brightening sky. "Elena, what happened? Are you hurt? Is it true people were up here last night?" Their questions rose like a tide. The sheriff stepped forward, hat tilted low, eyes scanning the destruction with a hardened expression. "Mrs. Ruiz, we're going to need you to tell us everything, everything. The mountain, the chambers, the intruders, the artifact resting warm against her chest." She could tell the sheriff the truth, but the truth was dangerous, too unbelievable for a crowd, too valuable to trust with everyone. Too sacred to reduce to a sensational tale whispered in panicked voices. Mira slipped her hand into Elena's and whispered, "You don't have to tell them everything yet." Elena nodded softly, her grip tightening around her daughter's fingers. "No, just enough." She stepped forward, letting the morning light wash over her bruised skin, standing taller than she felt. There were men here, she said. They forced their way in. They were looking for something they thought was valuable. Did they take anything? The sheriff asked. Elena shook her head. No, they didn't get what they wanted, and they won't be coming back. The sheriff studied her face for a long, steady second, as if he sensed the depth of what she wasn't saying. But he didn't push. Instead, he turned to his deputies. Secure the house. Keep watch. No one comes in or out without my say-so. Oh. Reporters whispered among themselves. Cameras clicked. People murmured. But beneath the noise, Elena felt something shift. Slowly, carefully, the mountain's secret would need to be shared. With the right people, in the right way, through the right channels. She and Mira stepped back into the house, closing the door softly behind them. The moment it clicked shut, the silence returned. Deep, thick, protective. Elena leaned her forehead against the wall and exhaled. Mira touched her arm. Mom, do you trust them? Elena looked down at her daughter, at the hope and fear tangled together in her eyes. Not all of them, she whispered, but some, and that's where we start. She moved back to the center of the foyer, brushing her hand over the worn floorboards covering the sealed chamber below. The boards were cracked, but the pulse beneath them had softened, steady, slow, restful again. It's safe, she murmured, for now. Mira stepped beside her. What do we do next? Elena lifted the artifact from her jacket. Its golden light flickered softly in the dim room, casting moving patterns across the shattered walls. Patterns that looked like the painting of a new dawn emerging from ruined stone. We make sure the right people help us protect it, Elena said. Historians, caretakers, scientists, people with integrity, and the men from last night, Mira asked gently. Elena's gaze hardened. They'll face justice. The world will make sure of that. She tucked the artifact back against her heart, feeling its warmth spread through her chest like purpose. We're not running anymore, she whispered. Outside, the sheriff's team began setting up barriers. People's voices echoed faintly, but the world's noise felt distant compared to the silent promise thrumming beneath Elena's skin. She wasn't just safeguarding an artifact. She was safeguarding history, legacy, truth, and as the mountain sun climbed higher, painting the broken foyer in gentle gold, Elena felt something she hadn't felt in years. Not fear, not uncertainty, but resolve. A quiet, powerful resolve. This wasn't the end of the storm. It was the beginning of the rebuilding, of justice, of healing, of a new dawn for the mountain. And Elena Ruiz, once a single mother fighting to survive, now stood at the threshold of something bigger than destiny. She stood at the beginning of her purpose, and as she glanced at Mira, at her daughter's steady, hopeful eyes, she whispered with a soft smile, "We're going to fix this, and we're going to protect what matters." Weeks passed, and winter slowly loosened its grip on the mountain. The wind softened, the snow thinned, and the sun, once a distant glow behind storm clouds, returned in warm, steady rays that drifted across the peaks like a blessing long overdue. The mountain house, though scarred and battered, stood tall against the sky, its broken windows now catching the morning light as if drinking in strength. Inside, the ruined foyer had transformed into a place of careful restoration. Wooden boards had been replaced, walls reinforced. The cracks where dust had poured through for decades were sealed with patient hands. And at the heart of it all stood Elena and Mira, two shadows moving with quiet purpose through the home that had chosen them. The authorities had taken their statements. Historians had arrived with reverent awe, and ethical preservationists had pledged to protect what lay beneath the floor, without ever unsealing it again. The world beyond the mountain buzzed with rumors and whispers. But here, high above the valley, Peace finally settled into the bones of the house like a long awaited exhale. One crisp morning, Elena stepped onto the porch with Mira beside her. The forest stretched below, calm and endless. Birds moved through the branches with the ease of creatures who knew dawn better than any human. The mountain air carried the scent of pine and thawing earth. Mira leaned on the railing, her breath forming faint ghosts in the cool breeze. "Mom, it doesn't feel scared anymore." Elena smiled softly. "No, it feels at peace." The artifact, now safely encased in a climate-controlled chamber built with scientific precision, remained on the lower level of the house, guarded by scholars, monitored by preservationists, and protected by law. But Elena felt its warmth every time she walked across the boards above it. The pulse had softened into something gentle, a slow and steady reminder of what they had saved. She had chosen not to sell it, not to profit from it, not to let it vanish into private hands. Instead, she signed an agreement that would turn the mountain house into a living sanctuary, part museum, part research site, part refuge, funded by grants, supported by universities, and protected under federal heritage law. And for the first time in her life, Elena no longer felt like she was fighting the world alone. A quiet knock sounded behind her. She turned to see Professor Alder, one of the historians who had stayed to help stabilize the site. His coat hung open, hair ruffled from the wind, his aged eyes warm with gratitude. "Elena," he said gently, "we finished the final assessment this morning. The structural support is sound, the vault is sealed. The restoration team will arrive next week." Mira beamed. "Does that mean people can visit soon?" Alder chuckled softly. "Not too soon, but yes, eventually. And when they do, they'll learn the truth the right way." He turned to Elena. "Because you protected it. You protected all of it." Elena exhaled, a breath filled with emotions she couldn't quite name: pride, relief, healing, a sense of belonging she had never felt before, not in her old life, not in the diner, not in the quiet struggles she carried alone for so many years. This mountain had given her more than safety. It had given her purpose. Mira nudged her gently. "Mom, look." At the tree line, sunlight spilled through the branches, painting the slope in gold. The morning light glowed so brightly it looked almost familiar, almost ancient, like the sunburst symbols etched across the vault below. Elena rested her hands on the railing. The breeze lifted her hair. Peace settled into her shoulders like a soft, warm shawl. For the first time, she felt the truth without doubt or fear. She wasn't just living in the mountain house. She was part of its story, now its guardian, its steward, its bridge to the world. Mira leaned against her side, closing her eyes in quiet contentment. Elena wrapped an arm around her daughter, holding her close as the morning unfolded into a quiet promise. A promise of beginnings, of healing, of legacy. And as the mountain's light spilled across their faces, Elena whispered into the gentle air, "We're home, Mira." The house seemed to breathe in response, its ancient walls warmed by the glow. And this time, its silence was not a warning. It was a welcome. Spring touched the mountain slowly, like a gentle hand smoothing over old scars. Snow retreated first, shrinking into silver ribbons along the ridges. Then the wind softened, no longer carrying the restless edge of winter, but a calmer breath, warm, steady, almost grateful. By the time the mountain laurel bloomed, the house that had once groaned in warning now seemed to hum with quiet pride. Elena walked through the foyer barefoot, feeling the polished boards warm beneath her soles. Weeks of restoration had transformed the once ruined entrance into a place of light and purpose. Sun poured through new windows, glinting softly across the repaired beams. Fresh paint, reinforced walls, a rebuilt staircase, but the heart of the house remained the same, ancient, patient, watching. Down below, Sealed beneath layers of protective stone and new support structures, the vault slept again. The archaeologists had come, the preservation teams had worked tirelessly, and when they finally stepped away, they left behind a chamber restored to silence, undisturbed, untouched, protected. Elena paused at the center of the foyer and pressed her palm against the floor. A faint warmth pulsed beneath her hand, not a heartbeat this time, but something softer, recognition, a reminder that the mountain had not forgotten her. "Mom," Mira's voice drifted from the hallway, small but bright. "They're waiting for you." Elena rose, brushing dust from her jeans. Mira stood at the doorway, hair tied back with a ribbon one of the historians had gifted her. Her smile carried a light Elena hadn't seen in months, a glow born not of fear or survival, but of belonging. "Did they come early?" Elena asked. Mira nodded. "They said they couldn't wait." Outside, the yard was alive with gentle commotion. A small group of preservationists, academics, and local volunteers had gathered beneath the pines, unloading display cases, informational boards, and conservation equipment. Laughter wove through the morning air. Plans for the mountain house's future floated on soft conversations. Alder, the elderly historian who had become a constant presence in their lives, waved her over. Elena, perfect timing. She approached as Mira ran ahead to greet the volunteers she'd befriended. Alder handed Elena a small envelope, stamped, sealed, official, looking. "We received confirmation this morning," he said, eyes sparkling. "The council approved full historical protection. The house and the land around it are now a designated cultural sanctuary." Elena blinked, stunned. "Already, your testimony," Alder said gently, "moved them, and the evidence, well, the mountain spoke for itself." Elena opened the envelope. Inside was a certificate bearing her name, not as owner, but as steward. A guardian recognized by both the community and the state. A title she had never sought, yet one that settled onto her shoulders with the warmth of purpose. A breeze lifted through the trees, brushing her cheek like a quiet acknowledgement. She looked back at the house, once broken, battered, wounded by greed, and saw not ruin but rebirth. Every repaired window shone like an eye opened to the world. Every restored beam stood tall like a spine healed after a long ache. The house breathed with a presence she could feel but never fully understand. Mira ran back to her, cheeks flushed with excitement. "Mom, can we show them the mural room later? They've never seen it." Elena smiled softly. "Yes, we'll show them everything that's meant to be seen." They both knew some parts of the house would remain hidden, some secrets meant only for guardians, not crowds, but that balance felt right, healthy. Honest, Elena scanned the group of visitors, faces eager, respectful, curious, not driven by greed, but by admiration for the forgotten civilizations that once lived here. These were the people Dr. Salvatierra would have trusted. Good people, careful people. Alder placed a hand on her shoulder. "You understand, Elena. None of this would have been possible without your courage." She swallowed softly, emotion tightening her chest. "I was just trying to protect my daughter. And in doing so," Alder said, "you protected history." Mira slipped her hand into Elena's, leaning her head against her arm. The gesture was small, but the meaning was immeasurable. They had survived a storm stronger than anything Elena had ever faced. They had stood against greed, fear, and violence. They had guarded a legacy buried for centuries. Now they were building one of their own. The volunteers headed toward the entrance, carrying tools and brushing dust from their sleeves. The mountain sun rose higher, warming the stones where the avalanche of history had once threatened to break everything. Elena lifted her face to the sky, letting the light settle across her features. A new dawn, a new purpose, a new future. And as Mira squeezed her hand, Elena whispered in her heart the truth she finally understood. The $1 house had not been a mistake. It had been a calling, and she had answered.